Welcome to Engaging ESG, where we consider, challenge, and celebrate the evolving world of environmental, social, and governance communications. I'm Jennifer Owen, Senior Director of Marketing at Caesar.
And I'm Katie Callens, Global Sustainability Lead at Adobe. For Season 3, we're talking with climate communications leaders who are shaping the future of sustainability messaging. From connecting with stakeholders to crafting compelling impact stories, we'll uncover the strategies that worked and learn from those that didn't.
Whether you're a seasoned pro or new to the field, you'll find practical tips and insights in every episode.
And whether you're working on your first sustainability report or reimagining your organization's climate narrative, these conversations will help you navigate the complexities of ESG communications. Let's get started.
Katie, hello. How's it going? What's the weather today?
The weather is great. Thank you so much for asking. No, it's Friday. I am so excited for it to almost be the weekend.
Fantastic. So I am glad. And, I do like hearing how weather is in a much better state than my own. So that's good. So, and I'm glad to talk about what life is like out and about. So I want to hear about teaching. I want to hear about wearing toques. And is it Chesterfields or what is that? So why don't you introduce our guest?
Wonderful. Thank you, Jen. Yes, I am honored and delighted to have my co-professor with us today, Robert Barlow from Hult International Business School. He is a professor and expert in ESG, corporate sustainability, and business innovation. His current research examines how companies integrate sustainability into their operations, the evolving role of chief sustainability officers, who we reference as CSOs, and the impact of regulatory frameworks like the EU CSRD. We get to teach together at Hult International Business School, which I'm so grateful for. But he teaches a lot of classes without me. I'm sure they're not as fun. But, he teaches business strategy, design thinking, a host of things. And he is also a frequent speaker at conferences and industry panels. And so we're so grateful to have you here today. Rob, joining us on Engaging ESG.
Hello.
Thank you for having me. It's spelled toque, but it is pronounced toque. For the record.
Is that right?
Yes,
it's
pronounced
toque. That's like when, because I'm originally from Boston, when, people go, is it Gloucester? And I'm like, no. And yes, there is an R in Marblehead, but you don't pronounce it. So there's that. So. But welcome to the show, and thank you for my first lesson.
You're welcome.
Yes, I am so excited to have Rob with us. It feels like this beautiful coming together of my work wife and my work husband finally meeting and some nerdy ESG polycule of sorts. You guys have definitely been my rocks for the last couple of years.
This is
now, this is becoming, we're throwing in some Bay Area lingo, to keep the Gen Z listeners. But honestly, I value both of you so much. And I'm so grateful for our friendship and our myriad of collaborations. And so it feels so right to have Rob here.
Feelings mutual, Katie. Thank you.
Well, so here's the deal. Katie thinks we're talking about the big topics and all the important things you teach and you research and the like, but basically we want to hear about Professor Katie. What's the scoop? Give us the lowdown,
Katie has been an incredible inspiration to me in the sense that she has a very direct and practical approach in the classroom that I've seen the response of students to and has actually influenced the way that
Does she boss them around like she does for Earth Week in corporate situations?
I guess not. I guess she's nicer in the classroom than she is in the real world. I don't know. No, but
we're going to need a response for you from that by March 1st. Thank you very much.
Okay, calm down. This is not the Katie Rose show. That's not why I invited Rob on. Thank you very much, Jen. But also, if you want to read about my teaching credentials, maybe there's some professor rating website.
See, yes. She's being direct, Rob. She's being direct.
But yes, being direct. Trying to keep us on topic, slowly but surely.
Thank you, ma'am.
But on the note of teaching, one of the things that Rob and I have been discussing a lot, which I am excited to dive into today, is How do you teach sustainability
Oh my
to our
God, yeah.
current business leaders? I know that, Rob, you built the kind of entire sustainability course at Hult, and it recently got a high ranking, I think maybe number 9 in one of the programs. So,
Fantastic.
yeah, just would love to hear more about like what you were thinking about when you were building that course and how your thoughts have changed after teaching it for a couple of years.
Yeah, so I was the co-pilot on the development of that course with another professor named Matt Gitsom, and it's our ESG and sustainability core is rated number 9 in the Financial Times ranking, which was quite a coup for Hult, and we're very proud of it. The teaching of the course has been a roller coaster, not in the sense that mainly because how we teach the course is so directly connected with what's going on in the world, and in particular, really what's going on in the world of politics. And so the first early iterations were 2 years ago, I believe, and gave us the opportunity to have a very positive. It really did I felt like the trends and patterns in sustainability and ESG really allowed for a sort of positivity and an ability to engage students in terms of this is really happening. In some cases, businesses don't have a choice but to adopt new kinds of measures to comply. And it's leading to a sort of revolution of thought within many organizations. And that really made for some strong student buy-in.
Yeah.
And in particular, the students have always wanted to be able to feel like they can think about these things and think this way, but have been in the past, going back, I won't age myself, but let's say 7 years, you might, you'd run into students who say, that's great, but, and they were sort of
right
in this mindset of this is the real world. We're now in the real world. I'm getting my MBA and that's nice to hear. And it allowed them to sort of break free of that, being able to talk about what's really happening and the kinds of requirements that are really good. This last time of teaching it, I just started a couple of days after the switch in administrations. And I have to say it was a time of soul seeking. What can I say? What should I say? What are the limits on what I should be able to say and willing to say in the classroom? And I settled on just being really, really honest about how I felt, more honest probably than I ever have been about how I felt and what I was feeling and where things were at. And I think the students really responded to it and have responded to it because they're going through the same thing.
Right.
So what was lost and what has been lost is that sense of tone transition from a sense of
like inevitability, right?
Right. Yeah.
Like, this is forward momentum. It can't be stopped. It's just going to get, even if the momentum slows or it's momentum forward, it's inevitable.
Yeah. And now it's back in their court and in our court, and it's on us to keep the flame alive almost is what the tone was. And yet what I was pleased to see was they hadn't dropped the willingness to engage and embrace those concepts. The mindsets that I'd seen maybe, 7, 8 years ago had not returned. And I think there's something to be said about some generational shifts as well. Students today are not as willing to compromise their values for the sake of, I don't know.
Yeah.
Getting a job even.
As I've moved into the sustainability world, I'm remembering how much I enjoyed this environmental politics class I took in college. But you're completely right. As I date myself, I took it, I embraced it, I really loved it, and I put it aside. I became a reporter and and it's like, well, this is Edward Abbey's great. And I think about him all the time. That's not my work world, though.
Right.
So
yeah.
I like, and so how are the kids? And I'm sure they're, some of them are older or whatever, but how are the kids taking this?
So Hult has an extremely international population.
Yeah.
And one of the things that's been really clear and apparent, and I've always known it, but it's sort of front and center right now, is that what happens in America matters to the rest of the world. And it serves as a kind of signal even to the rest of the world. And so the reception has been, the students are troubled, very troubled.
Yeah.
The outlook is somewhat bleak. And yet I continue to get the same volume of students who are asking me, what do I need to do to get involved in this? What do I need to do to be finding places in industry that are doing this kind of work? And I know that Kati who appeared in my class not that long ago has probably been harangued by students who are asking her those kinds of questions because they know that she's a great resource on that front. And so there's a certain level of optimism that has maybe disappeared, but I think there's still a will, and something that I'm proud of them for, to be honest. I think it's a sign of strength of character among an entire generation that is worth commenting on.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I can even remember when I was at Hult 2016, 2017, there was like little classes here or there on sustainability, but the fact that I had worked in that space before coming to Hult was very novel.
Mm-hmm.
And so seeing that shift, even I guess in like 7 or 8 years, has been really commendable. When you were building this program for Hult, and as you and I have continued to teach together, what do you think business schools are getting wrong when they teach sustainability and ESG? I think just when I was, go back to my experience for a second, like when I was looking at going into business school, I had already worked 4 years at Google, at EPA. Like I had some experience. I was like trying to figure out what to do. Haas at the time was like, oh yeah, we have a sustainable ESG. It wasn't ESG. They were talking about sustainability. I looked at it. It was an impact investing program. That was like what they meant when they said sustainable business. And I was like, oh, no, that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for corporate sustainability. And there's these like very specific programs that folks in the industry might be aware of that are awesome, like Presidio and Bainbridge that are like highly specialized sustainable business schools. But I think the revolution that needs to happen, which is starting to happen at Hult, and I think other institutions slowly but surely, is like, how do we get the real capitalists in the room? You know, like if you're already predisposed to be interested in this, that's great. But actually, so much of this job is convincing the other people that don't see this necessarily as part of their core work. And so I think being in classrooms together is incredibly important.
I was just actually attended a conference of deans from different institutions and just sort of talking about the future of business education. It was over in Boston. And there was a theme that came up across several of the panels, and that was how difficult it is to teach sustainability to students. And I, for whatever reason, didn't actually sit in on those panels. I only heard about them. I was at different panels on similar kinds of themes, but made a point towards the end of, when I had an opportunity of trying to engage with that idea, because I'll be honest with you, I don't find it difficult at all.
Who are they talking about?
Right. And the reason that it's not difficult is because we have this opportunity today that hasn't always existed to tell students, you have an opportunity to be, at least to some degree, liberated from being forced to make this choice between your principles and what's necessary to support your family, to sustain yourself. And it's not perfect, but there is an entire world of people thinking about the role of sustainability and ESG and how it can be leveraged as a strategic input. Like it's not a nice to have. It's an important part of building corporate strategy. And I used to frame my courses sort of before some of this transition, I would call it, happened, really in terms of, particularly with undergraduates when I would teach them CSR, right? It would be sort of, you're going to be faced with these difficult choices that you have to make. And I want you to understand the stakes. I want you to understand that even sometimes, choosing the wrong way by the standards, that may even be, if it's a matter of necessity, that's not something that you should necessarily carry a ton of guilt about. Because it may be that you need to do so to support your family, or to do this or to do that. Like it is a moral choice sometimes to do that, but you need to be constantly aware of the stakes.
That there is a choice, right?
That there is a choice.
Yeah.
Right. And then sort of describing an ideal world, at the end of the course, where we didn't, a world in which there were certain kinds of regulations that allowed us to compete on a level playing field on terms that were fair to all. Well, there are those who view this kind of thing as having a harmful effect on competition and all that. Yeah. Well, no, it's just competing on equal terms, on terms in which, right, people who are making these decisions are liberated from having to do so.
Right.
It's a question of freedom in a way, right? That you're free from this kind of choice. I feel like that is underemphasized in the way that people approach this topic. And I mean, maybe it's a little abstract. I'm a philosopher in my heart, and so it comes from there. But I think that students do respond to that idea, because I think that it can feel, when you're in business school, you can feel very trapped or captured in a mindset, and giving them an outlet, giving them a way to understand how they can escape it is valuable. And then there's, of course, what's actually going on in the real world. And
Yeah.
that will shape our ability to deliver that message, I guess.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Do you find you see the messaging? I was sharing something with Katie last week. Let's change our messaging around this to be about this is a fiduciary responsibility. So you're teaching the new students that this stuff is important because to all your stakeholders, including the capital markets, that this stuff is, you need to be resilient to climate issues and cost of materials and all the things that'll happen. Is that, I don't know. I wonder if that's already come into how the students are thinking about it, or it kind of gives you license to raise these issues as a young person coming into your company.
Yeah, I think that is, students who are coming into degrees like this tend not to necessarily be aware of just how rigorous some of those demands actually are becoming, right? And so I think a big part of, there seems to be often this sort of eye-opening moment where we talk about annual reports, we talk about, proxy statements, we talk about these things that are maybe a little dry for some people, but to move on to that next level of saying there are parallels emerging that are going to place equal kinds of demands on companies, and really getting into what that entails, because MBA students don't necessarily understand the scope of cost and time and obligation that goes into third-party auditing and all of these kinds of things that require significant investment on the part of business, and that these major companies are having to grapple with the idea that these are obligations and responsibilities that they're just going to have to take on. Again, it does have this powerful effect. You see a light bulb go on. You can feel the air in the room change as people realize that there's something real going on, that this isn't a sort of course about moral nice to have. This is a course about what they need to know in order to function in the business environment, starting within the next 5-10 years.
Yeah.
Rob, just bridging that idea of kind of making this real for folks, you mentioned having speakers like myself come to your classes. I know that when we started teaching together 2 years ago, you were really coming from this theory perspective, and I was bringing in practicum, which is a really fun pairing because I feel like I've learned some theory along the way. But I also know that you're researching a book right now around chief sustainability officers and how they operate. And you and I nerd out about organizational development all the time in this space because these teams are organized so uniquely depending on industry and leadership. So just wanted to inquire about kind of where your head is at with what you've kind of learned in this process. What surprised you about learning more about this field?
So first of all, that course that we taught actually was a big moment. And in part, it was because of some of the experiences that you described and others, Michael, that we both know described of what the practice of sustainability within some large tech organizations actually looks like. The extent to which it was about internal stakeholder outreach, the extent to which it was really a question of marketing yourself to the rest of the company is something that, as somebody who doesn't have both feet in that world, you don't necessarily see and you don't encounter unless you're really with people who are on the ground and talking about it. So there was a lesson there for me in the value of having that direct contact, probably one I should have learned a long time ago. But in any case, it did inspire me to reach out and really start talking more to people about what their experiences looked like. And so I got into this headspace where I just wanted to tell the stories of people who are doing this kind of work within organizations in relatively senior roles and what their job actually looks like. And so I just took it upon myself to collect a list of chief sustainability officers from around the globe and look them up and start having conversations with them. And so the book is really telling the stories of some of these people. It's still in development, but it's led to a lot of, I think, interesting theoretical insights that, right, like what I've learned is that these roles can look so different across different organizations, but there are some general kinds of patterns that you can identify. And so maybe one of the most interesting findings so far has been that, in my experience, at least among those organizations that are trying to take these issues seriously, that model I just described, right? Not of like empowered representatives with fully fleshed out organization dynamics where so-and-so reports to so-and-so and we have a
Right.
committee that does X but this entrepreneurial model, this idea that we're going to deal with sustainability. How are we going to do that? We're going to hire somebody to deal with it, or we're going to hire some people to deal with it. And so now we have a team. Well, what are they going to do? What
Right.
they're going to do usually is figure out a way they need to learn about the organization, what's going on within the organization, where there's potential leverage to be had. And the only way to do that is outreach,
Right. Like
engagement.
making relationship. It's all relationship.
Yeah, it's
driven.
all relationship building. And so Boston Consulting they published this report a while ago where they talked about, the early phase of sustainability is going to be about integration in organizations. It's going to be about generalists who do this work, who network and build these capacities. And then it's going to be distributed out and we're not going to need these people anymore. We're going to have, everything, all these competencies will have been built and it's all going to be fine. And I just couldn't disagree with that more. And the reason is that these capacities are going to be continually necessary. There have to be people who are coordinating these efforts and thinking strategically about these efforts and specifically in sustainability terms in order for this to happen. So there will be, I'm sure, institutionalization, but we really are seeing this was something else that came out. Many of the people that I was speaking to had just lost their jobs. And the reason that they'd lost their jobs, despite playing prominent roles within these organizations, was they were seen as redundant all of a sudden, as if, well, we've gained these organizational capacities and now we're going to move on. We've dispersed expertise throughout the organization. And, it varies by the company. Somebody else will be responsible for this now moving forward. And 201, and yes, they have an interest at stake, but 201, the response has been, it's just completely unclear how a company can develop strategy on this front without having people who are specifically dedicated to understanding the kinds of challenges that companies face, what's going on in the space, understanding the coordinating function and the strategic thought that goes into it can't just be replaced by distributing the responsibilities throughout the rest of the
Because you
company.
wouldn't do that with finance, right? Every team has a budget. Every team has, okay.
Yeah.
But if you don't have, we all need the CFO to set the strategy and then to hold us accountable. Like you wouldn't do that. And diversity, that's where I have issues with the business case, because I was in the diversity space for a long time, constantly trying to make the business case for diversity. There you go. But you can't not have a chief of HR know your strategy for how you're bringing talent in, even though you have hiring managers across the organization. So, yeah.
Yeah. No,
Boo.
I think that's absolutely right. And another thing that often came up with these folks was, like, what's the challenge? There's a great article, and I'm blanking on where it was published, but it's called How to Talk to Your CFO About Sustainability.
Yeah.
And the idea really was, what kind of language is necessary in order to sort of make the business case for sustainability? And so I think there's something to be said, and this was something that has come up again repeatedly in conversations. One of the big reasons I think that these kinds of arguments are often ignored, and maybe there's not a sufficient recognition of the specialization that's involved in being someone who focuses on sustainability within an organization, is that we don't have a developed science or mechanism through which to think about translating impact metrics into dollars and cents. And so there's a great program at NYU. It's called the ROSI program, Return on Sustainable Investment Program, that I try to plug to everyone I can. And I know it's got some traction, but not nearly as much as it should. And often I speak to people doing this kind of work and they aren't aware of it. And I want them to be. And that program is dedicated to this idea, to building systems through which to do things like measure to the returns on sustainability from the standpoint of talent acquisition and retention. That's a very amorphous concept. And if you go back 10, 15 years, you'll find people saying, purpose-driven business, well, you can't measure the returns. It's not a numerical, it's not a number, it's qualitative. It doesn't have to be. Or at the very least, we should be trying harder to prove that,
Yeah.
That's what these people are doing. And so they've developed tools and mechanisms to try to capture that value and trying to distribute it. And I think that's maybe where a lot of the action is. If we want to prove the strategic importance of people who are playing these roles, there needs to be a maturation of those kinds of capabilities, because at that point, it becomes clear that, right, I mean, the three of us are sensitive to the idea that this is a specialized field with specialized knowledge, but it just becomes that much more apparent. And the power of people in that position to really be able to make their case is that much stronger. So I'm a big proponent of that idea. And one of the big challenges really is, who studies that? Who studies the translation of impact metrics into financial returns? And it's not scientists.
Yeah.
And so, Jennifer, to your point, I agree entirely that this should be thought of as a new disciplinary frontier.
Mm-hmm.
We have people who specialize in the metrics and the measurement and the terms of success of marketing.
Right.
We need to have the same kinds of things. And that's kind of the core point that is made by these folks at NYU, is that there's this untapped resource, these value driving factors within, all of the potential sources of value within companies, the sort of least explored places to generate value tend to relate to sustainability. And part of the reasons we don't have a language to describe it. So that's been one of the key takeaways of talking to these people, is that if we had a better way if business schools were teaching students how to do this, or about the need to do this even.
Yeah, you come armed. You come armed with this metric. Because that was the deal in working in the space of bringing recruitment, retention, advancement of women and people of color. There was one old study, and it would say that the loss of someone was 150% of their salary because of the transition and the onboarding, and and I would desperately cling to that number, but I knew it wasn't firm. And that was, because then lacking that metric, that formula, then it just becomes diversity is nice to have. And guess what? I can throw it out the window whenever, and not barring the current administration, but I can throw it out the window when times get tough.
Right.
And so
times of emergency.
Yeah, I can send it. Everyone has to come back to the office, and we have to get rid of all of our hiring panels that go for diverse candidates. So,
Well, and to build on that idea, I think for someone who's been in this space for 15 plus years, when Rob started saying this to me, why isn't there a study of this? Why don't we have more rigorous? I was like, I don't know. I think, and it kind of blew my mind, Rob, when you said it to me, because I think those of us that have been in this space and know it as this chaotic emerging field are just well, this is hard. And this is the Sisyphus of rolling
I just have to get
the rock up the hill. And it's been so great to have your perspective. And I hope becomes more academic perspective, right? Because at the end, we talk about this a lot in the field of corporate sustainability, right? Businesses have a role, but also government has a role, nonprofit has a role. In the last 2 years, I've started to really understand, and academic researchers and institutions also have a role to help us elevate and make this a more legitimized field in a way that maybe, I don't know if I never thought it would happen, but I also just didn't fully understand how that even had, how did marketing become a discipline, right?
And I mean, right. I mean, I'm too gray on the history right now to be able to go, but there was a time when marketing was not a discipline within business school.
Yeah, all things before business school was a school.
And so I don't come to business education as my training was in political science. I'm a social scientist by training, and not that business scholars aren't social scientists, not the point. But it's been interesting, and there's been a cultural development that's gone on where I've learned just how important business school is to the culture of business, and very parallel and analogous to what goes on in law school, right? I mean, I think you're right. Business research is one thing, and I think it often is detached from the realities that are going on the ground. That's a separate issue, maybe. And it's one that I think is part of what sometimes will separate, right? The terms of success in academia are very different. They're often detached from what the needs of business really are, and that can generate all kinds of challenges and reasons for people like yourselves to think, well, what good is academia, right? And I think, but one of the really key factors really is that on the educational side, we are the language we speak is the language that is subsequently spoken in business. And so it's, I think, tremendously important as we're sitting here and everybody's talking about the future of the MBA and the future of this and the future of that. Well, let's think seriously about, right? Why has it remained that we have a certain fixed set of subfields, right? Why is it that we have to accept this existing hierarchy with finance, operations, Why can't we rethink that disciplinary focus and develop whole new sort of schools of bodies of thought, bodies of conversation, ways of attacking the problem of business? And so my hope is that we'll start seeing programs that are specifically more focused on this side of things moving forwards enter the market. But it is always going to be that chicken and the egg problem, right? I mean, we're not going to start producing degree programs en masse that are engaged in these subjects if industry isn't also demanding them. At the same time,
and that the students are interested
have a role in.
Right.
So, I mean, I see some of what's going on right now in terms of the transformation of many business school curricula to have a greater focus on these issues as a step in that process, hopefully, where we're going to have generations of students entering the workforce who are thinking seriously about the strategic value of sustainability, and that in turn may lead to a greater demand, let's say, as those students move up the ladder for programs that are more specifically focused on specializing in that discipline. But
Katie's going to save us. So that's
Katie's going to save us. That's right. She's bridging those worlds. Yes.
Speaking of me saving us and the podcast, I'm going to have us wrap up here. You've given us some really good articles and websites, but we also like to always end the pod with a question around, is there anything on your bookshelf, recommendations for books or movies, podcasts, things? It could be climate, ESG related or otherwise that you're really enjoying these days to recommend to our listeners.
That's a tough one because I'm really engaging in some pretty serious escapism these days with my reading choices.
Go for it. We welcome it. Bring it in.
You're talking to someone who's methodically going through a 70s private detective show. That's what we watch every night. And we're coming to the end, and I can't believe it. He's really my security blanket. I'm going to tell people, I'm coming clean. It's Mannix, a show I never heard of. We are now totally in it. That is our escapism. He always solves the problem. He wears the loudest print jackets, and he has amazing hair. And it's like 1975 at this point. I love it. So you can do better than Mannix.
Well, I'll be, it's going to sound very ivory tower. I've been engaging in a lot of escape. I've been trying to reread books, classic novels and things. I went through sort of a Cormac McCarthy phase. I was reading One Meridian, like the history of America, or One History of America. I actually just read on my commute, Brothers Karamazov. And the thing that's been fascinating to me, and yes, it's a long slog, but it's worth it. But the thing that's been fascinating to me about engaging with literature again in this way has been how the themes and ideas and concepts resonate still today. And so I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing or a bad thing. It can be a stirring thing, right? To see we haven't transcended the challenges of those days. We haven't transcended, and to the extent at least that we had thought. And so I won't say it's not, there's just been something valuable in that for me, the reflection and seeing progress in it, but also something, consistent in the human condition. And maybe there's something valuable there.
The hubris we had that we were like, we're always going to move ahead. And then that's like going back and kind of saying, yep, these are the universal themes of the never ending struggle.
Anyways, I will re-engage with the literature, and my next visit, if I'm invited back, I will bring something more topical to the table.
I'll give you all my Mannix DVDs. We're almost done. I'll share them with you. You'll love them. But thank you for being on the pod. You are, very much welcome to come back and talk about these topics again, unless Katie won't have you. Then I'll just blame Katie.
I'll stay on her good side. It's been a pleasure. Thank you, guys.
No, this is great. Thank you so much, Rob.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you for joining us on Engaging ESG. Have a question for us to consider or a strategy you'd like us to cover? email us today at engagingesg@gmail.com.
Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe to Engaging ESG today. It helps us grow, and even better, be sure to share the podcast with your favorite sustainability, diversity, or social impact colleague. And until next time, keep engaging.
This podcast is part of the Sound Advice FM network. Sound Advice FM, women's voices amplified.